My name is Kees Bruntlett. I am a native Canadian that has had the privilege of living and working in the Netherlands for the past 4.5 years as the communications manager for the Dutch Cycling Embassy. For those of you who aren't familiar with our organization, we are a public-private partnership of nearly 100 organizations, from consultants, engineers, researchers, producers, and of course municipalities, universities. And it was our immense privilege to put this panel together at the request of Micromobility to kind of share some best practices and insights from this great cycling nation. If you've been out on a bike this week, you'll know. The DC is located in Utrecht, and I'll take a moment to plug the city of Utrecht. If you have an opportunity to get out of Amsterdam, please do. It's not representative necessarily of the rest of the country. Utrecht in and of itself is quite special. Where I live in Delft, just incredible cycling infrastructure and numbers. We now have this immense privilege of exporting Dutch cycling to the world, and through the study visits that we host here in the Netherlands, through the workshops that we take overseas, and of course these panel discussions and exhibitions and conferences that we're lucky enough to participate in. So I'll take this moment to bring my fellow panelists up to the stage. Kees and Leander, if you want to join me on the couch, so to speak. Thank you.
Where shall I sit?
Pick your poison, yeah. What's the most comfortable for Leander, I think?
Smart mobility.
Smart mobility, there you go, yeah. So I think this is a very interesting topic from our angle because we are so used to talking about infrastructure, and there's so many cities around the world that are just focused on building bike lanes and traffic filters and roundabouts and the bricks and mortars of, if you will, of a cycling city. But there are also, of course, other measures that we should be taking to encourage people to use that infrastructure. And that was the idea behind this panel, was to kind of share some best practices from both within and outside of the Netherlands. So very excited to have both Kees and Leander here. If you both maybe just want to take 60 seconds to introduce yourself and your organization, and then we can get into the real meat of the discussion.
Yeah. Start.
Okay. Leander Witness, that's my name. I'm the national project leader for bicycling within the police. Bicycling from, commuting and also professional bicycling as well. And also responsible for the startup of electric surveillance police cars.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. And
My name is Kees Van Ommeren. I'm founder and partner of Decisio, which is an economic policy research and advisory firm based in Amsterdam. And we work for 80% for public sector, so for cities and regions, countries, to help them with their mobility, and also with cycling and micro-mobility and mobility as a service. And one of our specialties is bikeonomics and walkonomics.
Yeah, so that's a good segue to where I wanted to start, which is kind of the big picture. What is bikeonomics and walkonomics, and why is it important? How is it changing the conversation when it comes to actually putting money on the table when it comes to getting more people walking, cycling, and using other forms of micromobility?
Yeah, well, I would like to tell a little bit about that, because I think we started this 15 years or 12 years ago in the Netherlands, and I think we really helped making a change. That now in the Netherlands, the public sector, but also the general audience, thinks different about spending money on cycling infrastructure. Because in the old days, everybody's in favor of cycling, but when it costs like 10 million or 100 million of euros, then people think, well, it's too expensive for bikes. And I think we changed this way of thinking, and we did that by using a methodology. It's a social cost-benefit analysis, which is mandatory in the Netherlands for big infrastructure projects. But we translated that into a method specifically for walking and cycling, and also you can of course also use it for all other kinds of micromobility. Hence we made a lot of analysis about investing in a cycling bridge, for example, in the River that you probably crossed to come here. One, I think, 300 million euros costing bridge will be built there. We did a study on that. But it's not only about infrastructure, it's also about strategies of companies, both employers, but also companies like Cargaroo and Lime and Bosch electrical bikes. We help them with, an interesting example, I think it was the study that we did for Lime, for the city of Rome, where we help them to think about what's the value of your product to the city, and on top of that, what would be a good pricing strategy to increase not the profits of the company, but to increase the well-being of the citizens of Rome. So that's the kind of analysis that we carry out, and what we call bikeonomics and walkonomics if it's about walking.
So can we very quickly go through those benefits? I mean, because I think there's some that people are aware of, and others that maybe they don't necessarily think about when we talk about getting people out of their cars and into other modes of transport.
Well, of course, it depends on the project, but in general, of course, very important effects, of course, if people shift from using a car to using a bike or another vehicle, then of course it leads to the most important effect is congestion. So less congestion, which is of course in favor of those who continue driving their cars. Another very important effect in monetary terms, because we try to monetize all these effects, is health, and it's even bigger than congestion in many cases. And of course it depends on the person that rides the bike. Other effects include noise in cities, air quality, climate, CO2 emissions, livability of a city, labor productivity for employees, again, sick days. And we try to put all these effects in euros, in monetary terms.
So Leander, I think as Roman indicated, some people may be surprised with the presence of the police at a conversation like this. I mean, I think maybe it's a bit unfair, but a lot of people think of the police as having this kind of windshield worldview and are very car-based, at least in other places in the world. But can you maybe share the motivation behind the stimulation that you're doing with the police officers and administrative staff, and what's motivating that, and what exactly are you doing to change their behavior and their travel patterns?
Okay, I will try to explain that. Well, first of all, my apologies. My English is not as good as Chris's and from Kees, but I will try to explain something. Well, first of all, our police organization in the Netherlands is one of the biggest employers in the Netherlands. We have about 72,000 police officers. So the impact of smart mobility and bicycling is quite high if you can achieve it. In our organization, you can achieve it everywhere. Besides that, we are working 24/7, so our transport must be reachable during those hours. We started on a very small base, first of all. Because we found that it was a low-hanging fruit. When you start bicycling and you want to improve your CO2 emissions, then you better start bicycling. That's just clever. We managed to reach the press with it, but just doing normal things, getting people on the bike. And then the Ministry of Infrastructure called us and said, well, do you want to be an ambassador of the bike? Well, we are just one of the 11 regions in the Netherlands. So we started a chat with our leading chief in The Hague. And I said, well, Leander, let's think about it, because we are catching thieves. We are not biking, but we are catching thieves. Remember that. And then we explained, and then we are coming to the story of Kees. Do you know how many people we save if you start bicycling? We figured out that about 40% of our employees could bike easily to their jobs. In plain clothes, not in uniform, main part in plain clothes. That means that about 28,000 people could do that. Everyone who bikes can save 1.3 days yearly. That person is not sick. So if you count a little bit further, that means that we can save 180 FTE per year. Well, and at that moment he said, well, let's start biking. So that's that easy. We didn't get any money, not too much money to promote it, but we start actions. Try biking, test weeks, but we also improved our infrastructure. Good places to park your bike. You can load it over there if you have an electric bike. We have incentives. We have a prof biker, a former prof biker, who gives incentives for us, especially for us, to make you a safer biker. Everyone can bike in the Netherlands, but being a safe biker is something else. We started to talk with vakbonden? Unions. And we could double the money we could offer to our police officers to buy a bike. So you get an extra tax advantage if you start with it. So all those measures, there were in fact the cause that we could enlarge the number of bicyclists with 3 times. So we started with about 3,000. 2,800, and at this moment we have about 7,200 people who step in our activities yearly. So that's quite good. Together we are talking about 22,000 people who are biking every day at this moment. So we're quite nearby the 28,000 we want to achieve.
And that's just employees arriving to their
Yep.
job. That doesn't count the cycling that's done for
that's
patrols and other...
The patrols, that's another thing. We also doubled the number of police bikes. We used to have about 3,500 police bikes. We changed our policy a little bit. We have 7 different kinds of police bikes, and we have about 7,500 police bikes at this moment, and a lot of varieties for every kind of duty, and as a surveillance bike, but also a normal bike, so that you can see that's a police bike.
Okay, that's fantastic. Kees, I know you're quite active in Italy specifically, and I know there are several projects we could talk about, but I'm interested in Cuneo specifically, which ended up offering a per kilometer rebate to anybody that cycled, basically through a mobile application. But Bikeonomics did play a role in that kind of calculus, I understand. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Cuneo is an interesting city. It's a city of 50,000 inhabitants in the north of Italy, and I think it's the main production ground of bikes in Italy. So they're very in favor of bikes. So they asked us, what's the value of cycling in Cuneo? And what is the value of that per kilometer, and also who benefits from the people who bike. So we made an analysis for that, and it turned out that on average 20 cents per kilometer ridden by bike, the other citizens of Cuneo profit from that in terms of air quality, congestion, and the things that I just mentioned. And so the city said, and I think it's unique in the world, because I think there are many, in the Netherlands it's common that employers pay their employees to use their bike or to be healthy or whatever. But in this case the city the city council decided to pay for everyone who left their cars at home and used the bike instead. And they said, well, and it's quite rational, because we don't do it, we use taxpayers' money to do that, but also the taxpayers, those who pay the money, receive the benefits in terms of having a nicer city.
Yeah, yeah. So, and what were the results when this incentive was offered? You know, did it stimulate more cycling?
Yes, well, I don't have the numbers, but I know that it was only done for commuting, and of course they had to prove by an app, I think, to how many kilometers they had ridden. But they evaluated it after a year, and then they decided to continue. So apparently it was a success. So
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting case study.
Yeah, and we do have a blog post about that on our website if you're interested at dutchcycling.nl. Leander, to that, well, we'll talk about disincentives a little bit, but I am interested first to hear about, what is the per kilometer rebate that the police offer, and is this through the national government, the ministry? I think it's 28 cents per kilometer for...
Now it's 90 or 21 cents formally.
Okay.
We offer them still 90 cents, the old regulation.
Yeah.
But we will change it starting at 1st of January, I thought. And we are thinking about how we can have more people on bikes. I'm not saying you should bike, of course you should bike, why not? But we try to to bring the number of car drivers lower. And that means that we have to play with the situation we have to cope with. And that's a lack of parking places also nearby the police stations. So we are thinking about, and it's not done already, so let's be careful with that. We're thinking about to forbid the parking places for normal cars and allow parking space for bicycles. Probably we will allow parking places for electric cars, for instance. The things we are thinking about. But we have also extra benefits for people who come with a bike. Every police station has showers. You can change yourself if you want. We have a maintenance service for private bikes. So we do a lot of that. But we want to make the difference that it's more attractive to bike than to come with a car. Although we also can imagine that for certain distances, if you live on a distance from 50 kilometers, it's normal that you don't come with bike. Although we have colleagues who do that, we do so.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
And is that done in conversation with the staff themselves then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although we decide for the whole police organizations for all the Netherlands, but we do have discussions with the unions about it.
Okay.
And we are just preparing. And next week we have an internal chat and to see how we get in discussion with our unions for the next 3 years. So it will be a very tough discussion, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Kees, I wanted to ask also about an Italian project, the work that you did in and around the COVID-19 pandemic for the Italian national government and how that may have impacted conditions on the ground in certain cities, because it also always came back to bikeonomics and various scenarios as cities came out of lockdown.
Yeah, but first I would like to stress again what Leander said, because I think I don't know if there are any people working at cities or public organizations in the audience, but what you said is that after you explained to your boss the money that could be saved, then suddenly the mind shifted and said, well, that's the way.
Yeah.
And in the Netherlands, it's everybody in the Netherlands, all companies can pay 21 cents to their employees who come by bike or by car, whatever. They're allowed to pay 21 cents to receive 21 cents without paying taxes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we do that as well. You do that as well. You made a model in which people can calculate. So how fast do I have I earned my bike back?
Right.
So I used your calculation tool, and I ride a 1,600 euros racing bike to my work, and I earn it back in 10 months.
Yeah.
So it sounds like 21 cents. It's a lot of money. Just for me, for a person to ride a bike. But we also know that in average in the Netherlands, people who are not so active if they ride their bike, they become more healthy, and all those benefits for the employer. You mentioned sick days, but it's also about labor productivity in the hours that you're not sick. We estimate that it's more than €1 worth for each kilometer ridden by bike. So an allowance to ride a bike, actually, for companies but also for public organizations, it's a very good idea, of course.
And very quickly, does that calculus change at all for e-cycling? Because I know obviously there is a slight less physical output on the bike, but maybe that's offset by further distances and more frequent use.
Yeah, interesting question. And the health effects, of course, are less per kilometer because you don't use as much muscle power. But studies in the Netherlands have proven that those people who own an electric bike use it to ride longer distances. Yeah. And it seems that it levels out the fact that they use less power, but they ride longer distances seems to be a bit equal. But when I ride now in Amsterdam, I see all these young kids using the turbo power, and I don't think the rules are very true for young people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So but related to the pandemic, because I think in a lot of ways that did change the conversation in Italy. This idea of bikeonomics, and as I said, cities coming out of lockdown, they were suddenly faced with scenarios around the rising use of car and decreased public transportation.
That's true, and then that was a powerful moment that we had, because there was a lot of press attention to that. But we showed them, and that was also an eye opener for the politicians in Italy. We showed them what if you do nothing. So the base case scenario is after returning to Italy, of course, people they come back to work, the economy grows, and so in 10, 20, 30 years, the problems that they have already are not imaginable anymore. And then they're in like a city of Turin, where we have an office. There's I have a sore throat if I'm there for 3 days. So it's and then, of course, so we compared that scenario with a number of other scenarios in which you make sure that there's a possibility to ride your bike in a safe way. And of course, the social benefits attached to that scenario are very huge. And that was an eye opener. And after that, we were allowed to make the Milan bike plan, which was quite drastic in Italian terms. So.
But if I remember off the top of my head, it's for a €250 million investment, brought over €1 billion in societal benefits.
Especially in the Netherlands, of course, we're very developed in cycling infrastructure. So in our country, often the benefit-cost ratio is you only earn your euro three times back. But in cities like Italy and also in Latin America, it's you earn your Sole in Peru, for example, 20 times back if you invest it in cycling infrastructure. But it's really politicians are hard to convince, and of course they have to convince their parliaments.
So this is my closing question. We're almost out of time, but I know we host a lot of international delegations in the Netherlands. You've both presented to them. What is your takeaway message to them to get things started, to hopefully make change in their cities? What is the one thing that you hope they take away from your experiences as an organization?
Thanks for asking that, because this is also an international audience, and I think many of you, I compare the city of Turin often with Amsterdam, and the city of Turin is a car city, like most cities in the Netherlands. So within the cities you have roads of 8 lanes. I already mentioned the air quality. There's cars parked everywhere. But if you look at the population size and also the surface of the city, is exactly or almost exactly the size of Amsterdam. So if people from Turin come to Amsterdam, they think, this is a different kind of city. It's not possible. This is not possible in Turin because we have many more cars. How can we park all our cars? but also the density of population is about the same. So if you try to keep that in your head and look and cycle around Amsterdam again, and perhaps if you come back to your city, hopefully, hopefully this little message helps.
Yeah.
Making people understand.
Okay, and Leander?
Well, my message is quite short, I must say. Don't talk about it, but just do it.
Okay.
That's what I say in our organization as well. So.
I think that's the perfect place to end it. Yeah, thank you so much. And